All right, there are multiple efforts to resolve the U.S.-Israeli war with Iran this morning. President Trump says the leaders of Israel and Lebanon will speak today. Those two nations held their first direct talks in decades Tuesday. The president wrote on social media, quote, trying to get a little breathing room between Israel and Lebanon, end quote. According to the Israeli army radio, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will speak with Lebanese President Joseph Aoun. And Iranian officials and Pakistan's military chief met yesterday in Tehran. You see that here. Pakistan is pushing for another round of peace talks between the U.S. and Iran. A Pakistani army official was reportedly carrying a new message from the U.S. And meanwhile, the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports is still in effect. China's foreign minister told his Iranian counterpart the Strait of Hormuz must be reopened. And the advisor to Iran's supreme leader is now threatening to sink American ships in that waterway. CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi kicks off our coverage this morning from Washington and joins us now. Good morning, Olivia. Help us understand more about what the White House is saying about a potential second round of peace talks with Iran and what it might achieve.
Well, good morning to you, Errol. Yes, the White House describes the ongoing conversations as productive. They say that a second round of negotiations could take place sometime. They have not given us a date, but they gave us a place. They said it could take place in Islamabad, Pakistan. And the reason why it could take place in Islamabad, again, after those first round of talks fell through, is because the Pakistanis have really emerged as a key negotiator. As you just pointed out, they have been in Iran, they're in Qatar today, and they have been in communications with the U.S. side as well. Take a listen to Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, yesterday, talking about the potential for these in-person discussions.
I've also seen some reporting about the potentiality for in-person discussions again. Those discussions are being had, but nothing is official until you hear it from us here at the White House. They would very likely be in the same place as they were last time.
Now, of course, all of this is happening as time is running out. There's just roughly 5 days left on that 2-week ceasefire that went into place last Tuesday evening. Also, the naval blockade in the region still continues, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said yesterday the U.S. is going to put more sanctions on Iran and countries that it does business with, calling the move the financial equivalent of a bombing campaign.
All right, Olivia, thank you very much. We now have a rare look for you of life inside Iran. The BBC's chief international correspondent, Lyse Doucet, is in the country's capital of Tehran. And we should note this report was sent on the condition that none of her material is used by the BBC's Persian service, restrictions that apply to all international media organizations there.
We've just arrived in the Iranian capital, Tehran, after making a more than 12-hour journey by road. And it's a reminder that much of life here is still on pause in the midst of this fragile ceasefire. Airports are still shut. The schools are not open. The students are studying online. And even though some of the cafes are open, we saw in the restaurants, families were out dining. Life was hard here before the war. 60% inflation, the rial currency plunging against the dollar. Now it's harder still. There's real concern looking at the numbers because in those 5 weeks of war, there were also attacks on steel industries, on petrochemical factories. That's going to lead to a decline in economic activity, job losses. There were reports all through the fighting that there were small businesses were being forced to close, and online businesses, because of the widespread internet blackout here, were simply unable to operate. Iranians really are living this one day at a time. You really feel when you ask people, do you think this ceasefire will hold? They just don't know. It's not in their hands. But most people are anxious and they're not optimistic. And yet, the diplomacy continues. Here in Tehran yesterday, when the man who's turning out to be one of the main mediators, Pakistan's Army Chief, Field Marshal Asim Munir, was in the capital. He said to have brought proposals to try to narrow the gaps between the United States and Iran, to try to set up another round of face-to-face talks like the ones they held in Islamabad last weekend, and to a proposal to extend this truce because it's meant to expire next week.
All right, that was Lyse Doucet with our partners at BBC News reporting from Iran's capital.